Good afternoon, Marines. My name is Sergeant Jones, and today I'm going to be doing a book review on The Killer Angel by Michael Shaara. This book was written in 1974, and basically what this book does is put you in the eyes of the Confederate and the Union Army, their leaders, as a matter of fact. Shaara does an excellent job at breaking down each individual leader within this book, and it goes over between 3 to 4 different leaders from each side of the Confederate and the Union Army. He does an excellent job at portraying that. However, with that being said, when I say that he does an excellent job at portraying that, I mean he documents and writes literally everything down, from where they're moving to conversations they have, whether they were crucial or not to the situation at hand, from their morning cups of coffee to them even playing poker or not playing poker. With that being said, some of the figures that you are able to divulge yourself in and characters you are able to know within this book, coming from the Union side, you have Colonel Chamberlain, you have Major General Meade, Major General Buford, and also Major General Reynolds. Those are just some of the eyes that you get to see the story through, or some of the main characters that you get to read about from the Union side within this novel. For the Confederate side, you have the well-known, well-rounded General Robert E. Lee. You also have his right-hand man, Lieutenant General Longstreet. You also have Lieutenant General Ewell, and you also have Major General A.P. Hill. So those are just some of the different leaders within the Union and Confederate armies that you get to indulge yourself and get to see the story through their different eyes. The audience, I believe that Mr. Shaara was trying to captivate with this reading or this writing would be the college students, historians, and military members. Sorry. I was reviewing or going over some different studies in the books, and there's a lot of younger students who were doing reviews on this book, and it just boggled me, because this is a very hard book to read, and if you are not prepared to sit down and actually take the time to read it, then you're gonna have a hard time following it. And I just feel like the amount of time that you have to actually sit down and apply and concentrate in reading this book is just something that the younger generation is not may or may not be able or capable of handling. However, with that being said, one of the biggest takeaways I had from this book was the actual discipline that Shaara makes a very well-known point to demonstrate within the Union and Confederate side of the different armies during the Battle of Gettysburg. Anything that we'll just take General Lee for an example. Anything that General Lee told his Lieutenant General Longstreet to do, you could tell that Lieutenant General Longstreet was hesitant on doing it, but Shaara made it a point to go ahead and show that the discipline and the faith that he had in his leader was unmatchable, and he would go and get that done, and he'd go get it done, and guess what? They would win that engagement, that specific thing that they were trying to accomplish. And I feel like that's something that is lacking, honestly, in today's modern Marine Corps. However, with that being said, I was completely impressed that even back then, the amount of discipline that the military members had and the faith and trust they had in their leaders was that high. The main purpose of this book, I personally felt like, was to bring light on the Civil War. Growing up for myself, the Civil War was not something that was heavily preached to us, and personally, I felt that my history class, when I went through high school, it skipped over it. We maybe talked about it for a week, maybe, and moved on. And it's an important part in the American history. And I think Shaara is an excellent example at delivering, even though it's a fictional story, he does an excellent job at delivering that knowledge to someone like myself who wasn't really caught up on the entire thing. But after reading this book, I can honestly say that I know a lot more, a very substantial amount more than what I knew before coming into it. With that being said, though, I mentioned it was a very dry book. It's a very long and drawn out book, and if you're not prepared for it, you are going to have a very hard time reading it. It took about 3/4 into the book for action to start happening, and that's just because Shaara goes into extreme detail on how we'll just use the Union Army for an example, how the Union Army gets from point A to point B, and how they ultimately met at point C, which could be Gettysburg, and how the Confederate Army met at point A, moved to point B, and how they ultimately met at point C, which is also Gettysburg. Shaara set out to deliver a fictional story on the Gettysburg, and he did exactly that. Moving back here to my whiteboard, I don't know if we can see it here, but I actually drew up a little example, a diagram of what it looked like to be the Union and the Confederates on that day of Gettysburg. So over here you have this blacked out area is the town of Gettysburg, naturally. Right here we have Cemetery Ridge, and this blue line right here, this is where Major General Meade was holding, and he was also up there with Colonel Chamberlain. And obviously all this red on the outside is the Confederates pushing in. So Longstreet had this side, and everything was overseen by General Robert E. Lee. Now, the amount of detail that this book went into talking about the combative side of it was absolutely horrific. Personally, I did not expect that coming into it. I knew of the battles of Gettysburg, like I mentioned before, but I did not really understand how horrific of a battle it was. And I feel like Michael Shaara wanted to depict how terrible of a battle it was, and he did just that. There was literally a point in the Battle of Gettysburg where Longstreet ordered his men to go up Cemetery Hill, and Colonel Chamberlain's waiting at the top, and he says they all ran out of ammo, all the Unions ran out of ammo, and he said, "Mount bayonets." Next thing you know, they're just there, and Shaara goes into detail describing what it was like to be Chamberlain, fixing his bayonet and going in and annihilating the enemy in close quarter combat. And it was incredible. But like I said, Shaara, I would definitely absolutely recommend this book to people who haven't read it. Even though I mentioned it was a slow read, it is still absolutely 100% something that you should definitely sit down and divulge yourself in and really get into. Take 2 weeks out of your time, read a chapter, 2 chapters a day like I did, and get into the book, because there's a lot of knowledge in there, and just things that we can take and apply to our modern day Marine Corps. With that being said, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and that's all I got. Thank you.